So, who are you, and
Chris,
what do you do?
Web designer.
For people that have no familiarity with you at all. Which is
Well,
probably only just a few people at this point.
No, most people, I feel like. I hope. Yeah, my name is Chris. Nice to meet you.
Nice
Nick.
to meet you, Chris.
Yeah, I work on the internet. Yeah, build websites and write about websites, and I like to teach web design and just everything. I'm just fascinated by the internet, really.
Cool. So you're a pretty popular figure in the web industry.
Thanks.
I'd say you're a thought leader. You recently broke 40,000 followers on Twitter.
Oh my God, did I?
You did.
Should I check?
Yeah, you can check if you want. You just broke
I should
that.
at a party.
Well, I mean, it is just a number, but it's
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's tremendously useful, actually, because I travel a little bit, right? And at that number, you can be like, "What's a good restaurant?" at any time of the day, and somebody's like, "I want to answer your question."
Exactly.
I think that's my favorite part of it, really.
Twitter is now your Google.
Somebody the other day, though, was like, "You should monetize that." 2 people in the last week told me about how I should monetize my Twitter stream, and I'm like, I reject this comment, sir. I will never do that.
By tweeting about like Ferrari or something like that,
Yeah.
or doing sponsored
There's actually
tweets.
like services, sponsored tweets that are like, and I don't care if you do, but it's not right for me. I just feel it feels gross to me.
Yeah, no, I agree. So we're going to talk about how to raise your profile in the web industry, or how you raised your profile in the web industry, and how other people can do that. But before we get to that, I want to just kind of ask you some basic background questions. So what is your background? And actually, first, I want to ask you, what did you want to be when you grew up? It's not a lot of people.
Probably like a dinosaur captain. Is that a thing? I don't know. I don't have a super, I want to be an astronaut or anything. I don't know. What did you want to be when you grew up, Nick?
I think astronaut was probably in there at some point or another. But
yeah.
But I don't think I was thinking like, I want to be a web designer when I
No,
grew
certainly
up.
not. Well, that's because there wasn't a web. So that would have been really weird if you wanted to be a web designer.
I would have been clear, been able to see in the future, yeah.
I liked art and stuff. I mean, like later, especially high school, I was like all into ceramics and stuff like that. And then, but I was also a nerd. There was actually, in high school, there was a Turbo Pascal class that I thought was so rad. I really liked that language a lot. So I was like both throwing pots and like writing Pascal. It was like I couldn't even decide which two I liked more than that. And I went to college and I was like, I better do the Pascal thing probably, because that's where, that's certainly what the folks wanted me to do, And then I was like, I did it for a while, and then I got to take one class in that, and then it's like, now you can take assembly or whatever. And I'm like, oh, worst. You had to learn a bunch of. I hated computer science. I did 4 years of computer science in college, and then I was like, I can't do it anymore. I don't like these people. And then my roommate went for ceramics, and he was just always, the attitude in the art culture in college was so much better, and the people he was hanging out with were funner, and I was like, I want to be that. Sorry, parents, I'm going to switch at the end of my computer science degree to art, and then ended up getting a degree, Bachelor of Art in ceramics / graphic design.
So right after that, what were some of the first jobs you worked, or were you just always freelancing?
No, immediately after college, I took a job at kind of like a Best Buy kind of thing. It wasn't Best Buy; it was like a smaller local chain of that. And I did. So every week in the paper is one of those gross all color super warehouse sale, and it was like 12 pages of stuff on sale, and every week was a new thing. And I worked on a design team. It was a whole bunch of designers, because it's kind of fast-paced to put out a book every single week. So you're like, okay, this week you have page 7 and 5, and you'd have to lay out the stuff and put big stupid bursts about how on sale it was or whatever. So it was print design right after college. I wanted to work in web, and web was cool, but it was one of those things where it's hard to convince somebody to hire you for a web job when you're like so green.
So how did you make that transition into
I just did it on the side. Because I was also playing in bands. I played the band Joe, and I was playing in some bluegrass bands and stuff, and I was like, I'm going to make our website, I really wanted to, because, I had some computer science. I was like, I'm good at computers. I can do this, which I ended up just downloading WordPress and installing that on a domain that I bought, and I was like, I'm going to use this awesome music template I got, uploaded that, and I was like, I need to change the colors and stuff. And I'm like, what's in this fancy little CSS file? WordPress and a band website was my intro into it, and I find that it's the most common story ever for people that got into web design. So many people I talk to are like, oh, I had to make a band website, so now I'm a web designer. Like 50% of web designers, that's their story.
So did you jump into freelance work after that, or did you
I've never really
work
done
job?
freelance.
Really?
No.
So you never did any kind of client work or anything like that?
I did
at
client
all?
work because after that weird Best Buy-ish place, then I kind of regressed a little bit and went into pre-press. I shouldn't say regress. I don't think pre-press is fun. It's like taking digital files that you get from designers and getting them ready to go to press. And it was fun because it appealed to all of my nerdier senses, right? Because there's so much that people don't even realize all the stuff that has to go into preparing a file for press. But I didn't get to there's no real creativity. You can be creative in weird abstract ways, like how an accountant can be creative, but you're not actually being creative like with art. And then after that, but I was building websites on the side, because of course that's the other story that everybody has. And built enough of those that I was able to get a job at an agency that did client work, just by showing them cool sites I did for myself and stuff. Like, I have a blog. Check it out, it's cool, I made it by myself.
So
That was enough.
So for the last couple of years, you've worked at Wufoo. How does that story begin, and what was that experience like?
The agency that I worked at, based out of Madison, Wisconsin, Chapman Design, still a great place. I worked there for years, and kind of just as I started that, I started CSS Tricks too. So I was thrown into the fire. I was the only web guy there. I was like, I got to learn all this really fast. And so I was kind of blogging it as I was learning it, which was CSS Tricks. And then that started to grow as I worked there. I got better at the web. And then I got invited to speak at a front-end design conference, which is in St. Petersburg, Florida. It was the first time I was ever invited to speak. I was super excited. And Kevin Hale was also speaking at it, who's one of the founders of Wufoo. And we met there. And then just maybe a month or so after that, he just called me and was like, hey, you want to work for Wufoo? It wasn't just as simple as that, because I was like kind of a super fan of Wufoo before that. I was like, just because it's just a great app. I'm still kind of passionate about it to this day. Like, God, Wufoo is so awesome, you guys.
Sure.
Yeah. I just said, yes, I will accept your job and move to Tampa, Florida.
And so what was that like? What was the culture at Wufoo like? I mean,
it was so cool. We actually crafted the culture at Wufoo. It wasn't just this organic thing. We're going to make decisions deliberately to make our culture kind of cooler. So we worked from home. We had these, we worked 4 day a week like you did, or you do currently, right? Which is a really nice. Anybody listening that can influence your workplace, please do that, because it's super good. But there's some science behind that stuff. It's like building in recovery periods. There's this cool chart that Kevin has that shows you work 40 hours a week and you have this productivity. So there's baseline productivity and you're working 40 hours a week. And let's say there's this deadline coming up that you have crunch time for. So you make everybody work 60 hours a week. Well, productivity is way above average because you're they're working more. And that works fine for about 4 weeks. And then at that point, you're worse. You do worse work than if you were be working just 40-hour weeks. So, I don't know, there's some kind of studies and science behind all this. But your perceived productivity stays high. So you think you're doing all good, but you're really not. It's kind of weird. So don't do that. You can't just work 60-hour weeks all the time. So part of this was but we want to utilize crunch time, because crunch time can be really useful to get big bursts of work. So you have to do that and build in recovery time, like giving people time off and vacations and stuff like that. I feel like I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but you get it, right?
I could
It's nice having Friday. And so we didn't bother each other with meetings during the week. We had one meeting a week. It was on Friday. We had no office, so we would rotate houses, right? So it would be Tim's turn to have the meeting there, and then it'd be Ryan's turn or whatever. And we'd all go there, and we'd save anything that was a big debate that week. Like if you're arguing with somebody on a Monday about something, nope, stop. Friday, we'll talk about it then. That way there was no blocking. You weren't spending the day having this argument. You're okay, tabled later, I'll move on to the next thing so that I can spend my day productively. Anyway, I thought that stuff was so awesome when I started at Wufoo. I'm God, you guys really, and I had nothing to do with it other than I worked there and was a part of it. But I didn't craft that culture. That was Kevin and Ryan and Chris's kind of child.
Sure. So I want to talk about CSS Tricks. So CSStricks.com is a super...
Tricks.
CSS-Tricks.com is a super popular website. First, what is CSS Tricks for people that are totally unfamiliar?
It's my land, kind of where I write about all things, mostly front end, but I dabble once in a while in other kind of stuff. So if there's here's a cool new CSS thing that I learned, or here's some philosophical thing about maybe the future of CSS, or here's a little trick or a snippet or just anything, I'm like, I want to publish that. And it's kind of like my external memory in a way, so I can reference my own stuff. And it's also, people have enjoyed reading it over the years. The subscribership has grown. I mean, I know that's what we're supposed to be talking about during this interview, is our web profile or whatever. And
we'll get
that's
there.
part of That's what it is. So it's a blog mostly, but there are forums there. I also do screencasts. There's snippets there. I'm working on an almanac that is just like each CSS selector and property and just kind of a human language, kind of Chris version of how I would describe it. There's great docs already, like the Mozilla Developer Network docs for stuff like, oh, what's the syntax for nth child or whatever. They have a nice article, and it's comprehensive, but it's a little dry. So mine would be like, here's a more practical. I want to write an almanac of nth child, but like how you would really use it. Not that that's, you know what I mean, just a human languager.
I know what you mean. So how did CSS Tricks first start? What made you want to make that website?
It's kind of unglorious in a way. So not that you can't, that's all, aren't they all though? Yeah. I had a friend who worked for tech support for Adobe. So he would answer the phone and somebody would be like, Photoshop won't open. And he'd be like, did you plug it in? Or, like just dumb questions. So he kind of had a bead on what people asked, right? So we were like, you know what? We're going to turn this into a blog. And we were reading guys like Darren Rose and stuff who does problogger.com. And he's like, I have a camera blog and put AdSense on it. And now I'm rich as heck. And you're like, I want to be rich as heck. Well, maybe we can maybe we can have a blog. So we made Photoshop help, Acrobat help, InDesign help, and we had all these things, and we're like, slap WordPress on it, and he got calls, and he'd be like, oh, that was a dumb question. I'll just blog it and blog the answer to it and build up this archive of content of those things. And then I was like, let's do one for CSS too. Put that on there, slap the same template on it. That was by far the least successful one. Nobody cared about that one. But all the rest of them just died like immediately, because I was like, God, I can't wait to go home and write a tech support article about a dumb problem. I had no passion at all for it. We couldn't deal, and he didn't either. So we just were like, okay, that was a fun little run. I mean, maybe in another life or whatever. But the only one that stuck around, even though it was the least successful one, was CSS Tricks, because I was enjoying it. Building this kind of pseudo mini network of sites, I was learning a lot about CSS and resources. So I don't know, that was the only one I enjoyed writing for, so that's the only one that stuck around. And then, had little hits of growth once in a while. I got linked to by Smashing Magazine once, way back in like 2007 or something, and they were way bigger. They were even big then, they're way big now, but and I got this big spike of traffic, the hockey stick or whatever they call it, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so excited, and I spent the whole night that night redesigning the site to capitalize on made sure there's a big RSS button at the top that people could subscribe to and try to, and people started reading it, and then it's not all just and then I was successful forever. It was, then it comes back down, and then it's more of a slow growth kind of thing.
Well, it is a super popular site now, and how do you deal with that kind of heavy traffic? I mean, are you just one guy?
As a server?
Well, in any way you'd like. I mean, in terms of the technicals of it, or growing the community?
I mean, it's been a long, slow battle, I mean, on a totally technical side, it's not that hard. I mean, it's there's, I don't know, you throw WordPress on it, throw it on a decent server, put some caching on it. I use a CDN that requires no work, the caching plugin. You're like, use this CDN. It's like, okay. I know so little about that stuff, but the site holds up fine. I mean, it would take a lot to get it to stutter, I guess. But then there's the time, which you might have been more getting at, right? How do you manage a site of that? Because there's the endless flow of emails. There's the what do we do about content? What do we do about planning for the future of it or whatever? I don't know. I just try. I wake up and I manipulate my computer and do the best I can. I have no master plan.
One of the really great things about the site is the community and the forums.
Yeah.
What did you do to foster that growth? Because I mean, that didn't just happen by itself, right? I mean, what you do?
One is there's some dumb luck there a little bit in that there's where do you think of when you think of CSS forums? I mean, maybe Stack Overflow or maybe SitePoint has some stuff or something. Smashing Magazine dabbled in it, but I just looked the other day and I think they folded on their forums. It's just I put them up there. I put them up there because I'd get an email and I said, Chris, how do you make a triangle in CSS or something? And there was a time where I was able to answer those emails. That time has gone. But I was like, I'd love to answer you. I want to answer you. Every time I answer you, you're going to be, now we have this connection. You'll probably be a fan of me, like I helped you out, man. So the next time so I wanted to answer every single email that I got. And I was like, instead of answering with email, I'm going to answer it on indexable content. I'm like, can we just move this over to the forums? I would like gently ask them, and they'd be like, sure. And I'd post it there, and then I'd post the answer there. So everything that I wrote then became part of building CSS tricks rather than email, which is fine, but doesn't grow your content or whatever.
Sure. I mean, CSS tricks, I think, stands really well on its own as a great resource, a really great community. But has it helped your career in other ways?
I'm sure, right? I mean, I doubt I would even ever got, Kevin Hale and them would have never known who I was. I did a screencast on CSS tricks that was basically like an homage to Wufoo, So that, I'm sure, they noticed and it got me that job. And that's just one thing. I mean, imagine all the other doors it's open, stuff that, speaking opportunities. And it's basically, in a weird, scary kind of way has defined me and, as who I am in the web industry is all the stuff I put there, I mean, it's changed me immeasurably.
Sure. So in our industry, I would describe you as a thought leader. What's some
I lead thoughts, basically.
You do. I mean, you have a lot of opinion currency. Is that what they call it? Currency of
opinion currency? I like that.
Yeah, that's a word I learned today. But what's some advice that you can give to people that are looking to try and raise their profile in the web industry to get speaking opportunities or to get that next client or that next job?
Right, because it's pretty sweet, it's kind of worth doing because it opens all, behind all that is like money too, which everybody likes, But yeah, you have a higher web profile. It's another cool thing, hashtag humble brag. I'll probably never have to like beg for a job ever again, or craft a cover letter to send in an email, So that's pretty cool. That feels pretty good, And that's part of doing CSS tricks and stuff like that. What should other people do? I feel like it's not even that hard. I mean, building CSS tricks was a hard, long road, but just to raise your web profile a little bit or kind of become known a little bit, I feel like all you have to do is something like really rad and then have that be identifiable to you. Like if you built this website that looks awesome and you say, hey guys, I built this website, and other people link to it and be like, oh, you're the guy behind that awesome thing? Immediately, skyrocket. You could really only have to do it once to really raise your profile a little bit. Just have some proof that you are good at what you do and people will find you. I think the web industry is clamoring to find more people to follow, that do rad stuff.
So for someone that's maybe a little bit newer to all this web stuff and they are looking to raise their profile or they're looking to maybe book a speaking slot at a conference, how do you go about doing that? Like, do you become friends with the conference?
So you're a speaker organizer that's trying to find people, or you want to start speaking?
You want to start speaking.
Okay.
Right?
Sure.
As, maybe one way to raise your profile or, a way to make money.
That's weird because it's kind of, your profile gets raised and you get asked to speak, or you could raise your profile by speaking. So many conferences have the Christopher Schmidt's doing a CSS dev thing in Hawaii in December, and he's just opened it up. Be like, do you want to do a talk here? Submit it. So there's a lot of them. That's how jQuery Conference does it. There's a lot of conferences that are just like, isn't that how JQConf does it too? Just submit an idea. And if it's timely and if it's well presented and you sound like a good, smart human being who has good writing skills, you'll probably get in. Because I bet they get I don't know, I've never done this, but I bet they get a lot of stuff like, I want to talk variables, period. You're like, I'm going to try the next guy. So write good sentences.
So submit to these conferences, but do you think there's other ways like getting to know the conference organizers or maybe...
Certainly.
I don't know.
Follow them on Twitter and compliment their hair. I don't know. Yeah, sure. Have you ever submitted a talk for a... Well, One of the reasons I'm down here in Orlando at the moment, I don't know if that's weird in the context of this, but we are in the city of Orlando as we speak. I'm down here for a bar camp, which is, there are free conferences that you can go to. They're in tons of cities, so whatever city you're watching me through on the other side of your computer screen probably has one, or is one nearby, or it's drivable if you want to. They're free, and they're these unconferences where it's more about talking and who you meet and hanging out in the hallway kind of thing, and then just presenting on anything you want. So there's no set group of speakers and what they're going to talk about. All that's decided in the morning. I just mention it as like going to those is a good idea. It might not raise your like global web profile, but it will raise your local one, which is important too. And who knows what can happen from that. And it gets you more used to what conferences are like, and what good speakers are and what bad speakers are, and all that type of thing.
So you collaborate a lot. And I think you collaborate a lot more than people realize. Like you work on a lot of different stuff, like podcasts or little side projects or whatever it may be. Is there a reason behind that other than it's just for fun, or?
I don't know. I had looked back on that at one point, though. I'm like, I wrote this book and I did it with Jeff Starr, so I have that. And like really all these little projects I do, I like either seek out or fall into working on a small team on that project. And very rarely do I just do it all by myself, other than CSS Tricks for some reason. But pretty much everything else I do is on a small team. I don't know what it is, but I was thinking, is it just random? I was trying to self-analyze this earlier. I'm like, or is it just my personality that I prefer this thing? Because there's some obvious niceties, like having someone to bounce ideas off of and sharing the load and all that stuff. But I think there's more to it than that. I had this other idea for this, just a very small project that I work on that's kind of a one-off thing. And I'm like doing it and I'm working on it. And I was like I was listening to myself think about how I want to find somebody else to get in on this thing. And I'm like, why do I even want that? It seems so random. I think it is somehow embedded in me that when I work on a project, I need to find at least one more person to pull in on it. I had this idea to have gold bond alerts. Remember that? Where it's like it will text you if it's a really hot day and you should probably be wearing gold bond. It never got anywhere because I really wanted somebody else to like share the glory. I was trying to bug Jim to do it with me, but he wouldn't do it. Or he didn't refuse, but he's a busy guy.
I'll bug him for you.
Okay. I can't do that by myself. I need one more person.
Last question. We've talked about how to raise your profile in the web industry. But I think there's probably a lot of people watching that would rather hear you talk about CSS maybe. So I'm just going to ask you a super vague question. What do you think is the future of CSS? Or will there ever be a replacement for CSS? Or where do you think it's going?
Let me grab my magical globe.
All right.
Yeah, I have no idea. What? There's obvious stuff. I feel like the syntax of CSS is always changing in a little bit and kind of really needs it. So CSS preprocessors have been kind of popular and on the fringe and always kind of this ever-present growing thing. They're big in my life right now because I've switched everything I do to starting to use them. These are things like less and Sass or whatever. CSS, for sure, there's no doubt about it, is going to start adopting some of those ideas that can happen in there. So the ability to do nesting, the ability to do variables and stuff, that's coming. The future of CSS is slow, though. I mean, as we all know, it goes slowly. So let's say they finish the spec for nesting. Now it's this new thing you can do in CSS. Done, right? Well, not really, because when can we use that? Like so long, like 10 years maybe, we'll be able to write that in CSS without any help, because there's no way that gracefully degrades. Writing nest, if browser sees that doesn't understand it, it just will show nothing. That's not acceptable, So these things are, the future of CSS. It's trucking along now. There's new cool stuff all the time, but our ability to actually use them without any help is slow. But I think the future is bright. People like to complain about CSS, but I don't. They're like, "What are you, dumb? CSS is the worst. It can't do layout." I'm like, I don't know. Have you seen the internet? It's full of CSS. It's awesome.
I think CSS is pretty all right. Well, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it. I think I definitely learned a lot. And thanks for hanging out.
Yeah, man.
Really?
Thanks for having me, Nick.
Appreciate it.
Treehouse. Is that a T? T.